Going there right now to check in with Cecil Hurd of the Tuscaloosa News and Tidesports.com. And Cecil, our playlist theme of the day, as you may have heard there, is cars. And with that, we dialed up a little Iggy Pop with Passenger for you on a Tuesday morning.
That's a good one. You've got a wide world of car songs. Going back, you can go all the way back to Chuck Berry, the old Rocket '88 days, right up until today. Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark with Tesla Girls. So, that song actually preceded the Tesla, but it's a nice tie-in. It's amazing. You watch the Super Bowl, watch an NFL game. How many car commercials are just they drive the car around and they play classic rock in the background? Bob Dylan tried to sell me a car in the Super Bowl.
Just about anybody will these days. As far as alternative / punk movement, Iggy Pop, the Stooges, New York Dolls, who do you sort of equate with that back in the sort of, I don't know, 70-ish, early 70s, that really radical movement back, the Velvet Underground?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's you get into grunge, punk. Velvet Underground was really a precursor of that on the New York scene. The first real punk band that made a huge impression were the Sex Pistols. And people kind of regard the Sex Pistols as a freak show a little bit because of Johnny Rotten. But if you put on the record, their guitar player, Steve Jones, can really play. I mean, he can really play. I guess this happens to all young punks, right? He became a studio guy in L.A., but he can really play. So, Sex Pistols, Clash. I'm a huge Clash fan.
Me too.
And then it branched off from there. That's a hard life.
Who would you put as the U.S. answer to that, though? Would it be more the Ramones, or would it be
Ramones? Ramones definitely. And again, that New York scene with Velvet Underground, who were before, and Patti Smith, and some of those bands leading up to, and far more sophisticated musically leading up to Talking Heads.
There you go.
So you could branch it. The Ramones. I was thinking about Rock and Roll High School the other day. So they certainly were influential beyond their success at the time.
I don't know, Cecil, if any of these bands we're talking about ever played Starkville, but the Alabama men's basketball team will do that tonight.
They will.
What awaits this Alabama team? Obviously, looking for the season sweep against the Bulldogs. It's a matchup that we talked about a couple weeks ago when these two teams got together. Quindary Weatherspoon, his brother Nick, Lamar Peters in that backcourt. But Reggie Perry, the McDonald's All-American true freshman, had a nice game for Mississippi State here in Tuscaloosa with 18 points and 7 boards. Who are some of the other guys that Alabama must concern itself with tonight in trying to get its second straight road win?
Well, those four that you mentioned, obviously, and then they've got a big, powerful inside game. Reggie Perry, I'm going to tell you what, that kid, he may play his way out of Starkville before this season is over. He's that good. Reminds me of Robert Williams from Texas A&M last year, but is much more skilled than Robert Williams was in terms of having an offensive game, shooting the ball, handling the ball. So really an impressive young man. He's sort of followed up on what he's done, what he did in Tuscaloosa. So he's a load. State's kind of got their backs to the wall a little bit, and I'm not going to say, here it is. It's February 11th, and or February 12th, and this is a must-win. They got to win, but this is the third game of a 3-game homestand, and they've lost the first 2. And that would have been, they were looking at making their move with that homestand, and instead, they're just trying to sort of keep pace now. And if they lose and drop to 4-7 in the league, again, that they're pretty solid. Their strength of schedule is good, but that would be a real disappointment to go over a 3-game homestand.
Yeah, we can talk about net rankings and strength of schedule, which, as I said a few moments ago, I think State's top 10 right now in strength of schedule. But sooner or later, you got to start stacking some wins, right, Cecil?
You do, because then say if they don't, let's just hypothetically, if they're sitting there at 4-7 and they got 4 on the road left, in the back 7, so all those road games are going to be fairly tough. So it's a big game for Alabama, but I think State's got their back to the wall a little bit. Absolutely.
Talked about this a little bit earlier. Avery Johnson, Ben Howland come into the league at the very same time, same year, same cycle of coaching changes. You look at the numbers; they're almost identical in terms of wins and losses. How would you kind of compare those two at this point in terms of their respective tenures at Alabama and Mississippi State?
Similar. They're similar. State hadn't made the NCAA tournament yet.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big difference. They got close last year. They won a bunch of games, but they didn't make the field. So I would say that's the biggest difference. But State's stacked some talent up in there. They really are a strong looking team. So I think they've both done a good job. I think that they have. And to be perfectly fair, Ben probably inherited a little tougher situation than Avery did. Not that the one that Avery inherited was great or that they were abundantly talented, but I think Mississippi State didn't feel like they were headed in the right direction with Rick Reier, and made a switch, and they've been competitive ever since. They just need to get over that hump, to make a pun, an unavoidable pun about their arena, and get in the. But Alabama doesn't want to have it be at their expense. It's going to be another nice quadrant one win for Alabama if they can get it.
As far as rivalries go on the basketball court, where do you have State in relation to Auburn and some other teams, Kentucky even, from the Alabama perspective? Where does this rivalry sort of rank? It's been heated at times, but based on some of the coaching matchups, right? And even their wives, I'd say.
Mark and Rick Stansberry, they go at it, and recruited head to head for some of the same guys, whether it's Mario Austin or Mo Williams. So yeah, it's been pretty. It's so close geographically that that helps. It's not quite a Duke UNC, but it's close enough that fans can get from one place to the other, and so it's been good. I think it's been positive, going back to really as long as back to the day you won't remember, Ricky Brown and Wiley Peck and those guys at Mississippi State.
That was after peach baskets, right, Cecil? Those guys
barely. They still had the baskets, but they had taken the bottom out of them.
There you go.
The ball would go through. You didn't have to fish it out of the basket after every shot.
Wow, innovation there. We're talking with Cecil Hurd of the Tuscaloosa News and Tidesports.com on a Tuesday edition of Southern Fried Sports, presented by Carty and Lloyd, attorneys at law, and Mercedes-Benz of Tuscaloosa.
The one prediction I'll make, Trav, and then we'll move on. Alabama will not win again shooting 1 for 15 from 3, which is what they did in Tuscaloosa.
Oof, you got that right. And you look at this Alabama team right now. What about from a health standpoint, specifically in the post, Cecil? What does this look like for Alabama going over there tonight?
I think Alex should be okay. Whether he'll be 100% strength, the flu can take it out of you, as you know. Even when you're young and strong, it takes a couple of days. And Galen's just going to be a situation. Galen Smith's just going to be a situation of how he responds to the concussion. You can't rush him back. You can't give him 2 aspirin and say get out there. The old days where you stick the smelling salts under their nose and put them on the floor. That doesn't work anymore. So Yeah, that's two big bodies. If nothing else, although they're better than this, but you'll understand what I'm saying. It's 10 fouls down there in the post, and
Yeah.
you're trying to guard some big boys from Mississippi State.
Cecil, we're 10 games into the SEC portion of the schedule. Give me your biggest surprise in the league, whether it's good or bad or both, at this point in the season.
Ole Miss. Um, I would say South Carolina too. Their non-conference wasn't great, but they've done a nice job in the conference. Now they've got to go to Tennessee tonight, but or tomorrow night, whichever night it is on the schedule. But I'd say Ole Miss and then South Carolina probably. Ole Miss was picked last, and Kermit's got them, where they're thinking about sneaking up there and getting that bye in the 4th spot if they have a nice finish.
Big game down at Auburn Arena tomorrow night between the Rebels and the Tigers from that standpoint. Cecil, shifting gears towards football a little bit here. Talked about this early in the program too, sort of a different narrative when it comes to the Alabama quarterback position, looking ahead to March and April and spring practice compared to really 2013, maybe the last time you go that far back, although Jalen went into 2017 as the guy. How are you going to look at that position this time around for Alabama in terms of the overall state of it, and perhaps maybe even big picture, thinking about a scenario post Tua and how that all starts to play out?
Well, first of all, for this spring, what I'll be interested in is exactly what the no contact rules, how those are going to be applied to Tua. You may have like a 5-yard arc that you can't come within 5 yards of Tua at any point because his health and his durability are a big key to the season. You've got to have a quarterback, and you can't. It's going to be hard even for Alabama that's very skilled at other positions with an inexperienced guy, whether that's inexperienced Mac Jones or inexperienced freshman. Yeah, so the first priority is to have Tua out there and healthy for as many games as possible. Hopefully, if you're an Alabama fan, for 15. So, and that 15's a haul. And I know Clemson played 15 just like Alabama did, but it's a little different 15, and that's a haul. So, you want to see if how Lee is going to emerge, how Paul Tyson's going to emerge, and Mac. I think that's going to be really fascinating in the spring. There's no competition in terms of who the number 1 guy is, but there might be at number 2. You'd have to think that Mac has the edge there, but it will really be interesting to see how that stacks up. Long range is going to depend on all that. If one of those 3 looks like the next guy, then he's the next guy. If not, anything's possible, very much including the transfer portal.
Cecil, we haven't talked since before this latest signing period for football. When it was all said and done, given the defensive line class that Alabama signed, and understanding all the other positions are critically important, but if you put enough of those kind of defensive line classes on top of one another, doesn't it make everything else sort of just kind of fall into place with that type of quality?
Gives you a chance. You're not going to win the championship without good defensive line play. Alabama's had it, Georgia's had it, Auburn's had it, LSU's had it to an extent. Although I didn't think that theirs. I thought theirs this season. That's one of many reasons why Sopsher was a big target for them. They had great back seven with White, with Reed Williams, Delpit, but they need to beef up their front 4 too. So, yeah, if you've got those guys and you can roll them in there, which Alabama's been fortunate the last couple of seasons, certainly last season, not to have any injuries because the depth hasn't been great. But now with Raekwon coming back, with LeBron and Ray, with Christian Barmore, some guys who've been in the program for a year and should step up. They're not going to explode like Quinnen did. You know, that's once every 20 years that a guy blows up like that to be possibly the number one pick in the draft. But they can be very good players. And then just take 2 or 3 of those freshmen, and all of a sudden you've got a nice rotation. You know me, I'm huge on defensive line snap counts. Your guys are playing 40, 45 instead of 60, 65, and it makes a big difference.
Absolutely. Cecil, as we continue with the football talk here with you, let's get into this Kyler Murray thing a little bit before we let you go. In terms of sensibility, his decision, the former Oklahoma quarterback, to shift his focus now more towards the National Football League, where does that sort of sit with you from that standpoint? Is it something that you think makes a lot of sense? Do you think baseball might be his better option? How do you sort of view that?
I think he's smart. I think that my advice to him would have been to give football a chance, see how it works out for you, and then baseball will probably be there in 3 years. Maybe not at the kind of money, but you'll have had NFL money. You know, your money's going to be okay. And if it works out for you, and you're a star NFL quarterback, then that's what happens, and that would be a great path for him. And I think baseball will be there. You know, people talk about what a great prospect he is, and he is. But almost invariably, all those football guys have to learn how to hit pitching that they've never seen in their life before. You know, left-handers who breaking that thing off, and right-handers. I don't guess a right-hander gets drafted now unless he's throwing 98. And you get to the majors, and it's higher than that when they come out of that pen at 101. So it's not as guaranteed as people necessarily say. He's a great athlete, no question about it. But it's not as guaranteed sometimes as people think it is. So if I were him, I'd take a look at the NFL. I'd go to the combine. I don't know that I'd throw at the combine, but I'd go, you know, at least talk to everybody and see. And if the Dolphins pick you in the middle of the first round, or that's just the one team that he's been mentioned with, take your shot and see what happens.
Yeah, and even if you go through the draft process and you're not taken where you'd like to go, the A's are still going to be there, right? I mean, you
sure,
could
absolutely.
You could turn right back around and go back to baseball.
Yeah, right. If you go to the combine, if you work out for some teams and they don't like you, and you end up on the second day, then you just sign your baseball deal. They'll re-sign it. They'll rework it.
Yeah, he truly has.
It's great to have options. But I will say this, and we were talking about this in terms of the AAF. The one thing that's true in football, and this is college football, NFL, AAF, just in football, there's more teams than there are quarterbacks, and that's the truth. I'm talking about guaranteed, consistent, productive quarterbacks. There's just not that many of them, and if you can be one, you're a valuable commodity.
No doubt about it. And if history tells us anything, whether it's Johnny Manziel or Tim Tebow of late, there's one team out there that is going to reach. There is. And I have a hard time seeing Kyler Murray, even if he measures 5'9.5" in Indianapolis, not going in the first round. It's a good year for him too, right? I mean, you got Dwayne Haskins of Ohio State, you know, Drew Lock, okay, of Missouri.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice for me because you know Drew Lock can do a lot of quarterback things. It's just how consistent can he be? But you know, you're really choosing divergent paths if you're choosing between Kyler Murray and Drew Lock. And you may say, I wouldn't touch Drew Lock. He throws too many interceptions, and that's fine. It's just a different kind of quarterback.
And they, as you said, they need quarterbacks. So whatever you think of even Drew Lock, he's not a guy that's going to get out of the second round. So compared to maybe even next year, this is a good year, I think, for Kyler Murray to be taking the path that he is. Hey, Cecil, as always, We appreciate your help here on the program, making the trip over to Starkville, I would guess, this afternoon, or maybe already headed that way. Safe travels, my man. We'll catch up next week.
I appreciate it. We'll talk next week.